Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to have some fun. And when I say fun, the reason I believe that we're going to have fun is because of the topic that we are talking about. And so I'm going to share what we call the Win Before You Begin playbook. And that's going to go into the chat. But I've also already sent that over to media and to the team. So VoxLive will have that up for you all if and when you watch the playback. Because what we're going to do today is that we're going to look at this exciting thing called winning, victory, success, and how do we guarantee it? And yes, how do we guarantee that we win? And so the very first thing, I have exciting news for all of us here, is that there are only 57 days left in 2025. And I know some of you are like, exciting news, Neal, that's horrible. That is not exciting. But yes, it is. And here's why it's exciting. Because we can still guarantee a win before we begin 2026. We can even win in this year if we take some actionable items and some steps. So today, I'm going to share the playbook, the process. This is not going to be the sexiest, but it is going to be that foundation that Joe just mentioned. How are we going to build that skyscraper? How are we going to build this fortress, this real estate empire that we have been yearning for? Well, it really comes down to the planning process. And so I always ask a question. I always remind everyone of what I was taught and that we've probably heard. How many of us have heard that we win the day before the day begins? And that is by planning and then executing the plan. Well, why do most realtors, why do most people fail? Why do most people not win? Well, here's why most people lose. It's three reasons. One, because they never define what a clear win is. Now, I mean, yes, we have ideas in our head. We have a thought. Maybe we have a dream. But what do they say? A goal that is not written down is just a dream. And dreams only come to those who sleep. So for us, I'm going to ask, have you defined what a clear win, what a clear victory is? If you have not yet, we're going to walk through the process of defining that clear win today. I want to be clear. You might not have the definition of success, of a victory, of a win today, but you will walk away with the process on how to get there. And the sooner you begin, the higher the likelihood that you're going to guarantee success for 2026 before January 1st rolls around. So the first reason people lose is because they never define what a clear win is. The second reason most people lose is because they don't create and follow a plan that leads to success or victory. Right? So even if we have a goal, maybe we call it a resolution, if we never create and follow this plan, this roadmap that's going to lead to success, then we are guaranteeing failure. And that is not what we want to do. And then the third reason most people fail, myself included, and maybe you or your cousin, colleague fail, is because we either don't measure progress or we measure at the wrong intervals. Right? So some of us are trying to do some fantastic things financially, and we're only giving ourselves a week to accomplish a goal. When the reality is we've been in the industry for decades and we have not gained momentum. So what can we really expect to accomplish in a week? I know some of you are probably reaching out to the London Foster team here on November 5th. And you're like, man, my goals, I'm behind. I'm not going to reach my yearly goal. Well, that's because not you were tracking or measuring weekly. You just didn't look at all. So we have to make sure we measure and track progress at the correct interval. So it might not need to be weekly for some things. It definitely can't be annually for most things, but maybe some of the things and the right intervals we're going to look at daily. Some things we're going to track weekly, monthly, quarterly. And if we do that right, following this clear plan and executing after we know exactly what a clear and defined win is, that's how we're going to guarantee success. And I will tell you all, this is that foundation piece. That's dirty, that's hard. It's really going to test us, and it's going to determine if and how big our empire or our tower is that we build. So here's something, the very first thing that we're going to look at. I'm going to share the Win Before You Begin playbook on the screen, but there's a key part of everything we're going to look at, and that's the mindset. And here's why this is so vital, why it is absolutely necessary for you here with me today, is because we never achieve and sustain anything bigger than we see ourselves first. Right? We never achieve and sustain. So you might achieve something big, but you won't sustain it if you don't see yourself as the person who can handle this thing. So it doesn't matter how big your goals, your dreams, your aspirations are. If you see yourself as a weakling, as a small individual, as someone who got lucky, you're not going to be able to sustain success. So I want us to just address that up front, and then we'll look at how do we ensure the success as we're going forward. And so on this road map, on this plan into guaranteeing a win before we begin, we're going to look at three things. And I'm going to challenge you to look at these three things not only today or your planning week, but throughout the rest of this year. And so we're going to look at where are we currently, how did we get here, and where are we going? So where are you? How did we get here, and where are we going? All three are vitally important to tuning our GPS. You know that our dreams, our goal, our destination, that's the final part that we put into Waze. That's where we want to go. Maybe some of us have a great idea of where we want to go, but we don't even know where we are. So that's the starting point. GPS only works if we know where we are. And here's the hard thing. We must know how we got here. So as we look at where we currently are, it's important that we do that reflection, that assessment without judgment. So no matter where you are on this date in your business, in your life, whether you have achieved a lot or maybe you've come up short just a little bit, we want to assess where we are, and it's important that you do that without judgment. That's number one. When we look at how did we get here, we look and we reflect that way without blame. We are not blaming ourselves. We're not blaming others. We're not blaming the market. We're not blaming Bobby and London Foster, our clients. We're not blaming anyone. We are just fact finding, right? Because we want to look at where we are without judgment. We want to look at how did we get here without blame. We want to use it as a fact finding process. And here's why. People say that history or experience is the best teacher. That is a lie. History or experience assessed or studied, that is the best teacher. So if you're in a place where things are great, then we need to know how did we get here. If you're in a place that is less than desirable, we need to know what? How did we get here? And it's not to point the finger, especially not at yourself, ladies and gentlemen. So we want to make sure that we look at how did we get here without blame. And then finally, we're going to look at where are we going without limitation. I know some of you are practical people. You're saying, Neal, I've never done this. I've only sold a few transactions or closed a few deals. Well, we want to look at where are we going without limitation. Because if you can do that, if you can look at where you are without judgment, look at how did we get here without blame, and then look at where we're going without limitation or restriction, it is almost guaranteed that we're going to win before we begin. So now I'm going to share my screen and we're going to start looking at this process, this plan, this roadmap or this playbook to how do we win before we begin. The first thing is, where are we currently? This is an assessment. So you either have this in the chat where you can open it up, or when you're watching the playback, make sure you look at this. But the first thing that I must ask is, do you usually view yourself as as a winner. We see it right here. And the reason I ask this is because I want to know how you view yourself. We can only be what we see. If I see myself, if you see yourself as a loser, someone who barely scrapes by, who can't get it done, someone who just doesn't understand for whatever reason, the chances are very low that you're going to succeed. So I'm going to ask you, do you usually view yourself as a winner? Now, if the answer is no, it does not mean that all hope is lost. It just means that we've got to do more work on building Joe's foundation that he talked about. That's the key. So for some of us, the very first thing that we have to do today, not tomorrow, 57 days away from the new year, is we're going to have to start changing the way we see ourselves. Then we look back, remember, at how did we get here? We have to really be accountable, not pointing blame or placing blame, pointing fingers, but we must answer, what's the primary reason that we don't win more? And if you look, that most of the options here, besides I don't know, is all about self. It's about accountability. Is it lack of clarity? Is it procrastination? Is it fear? Do you not know why you haven't won more? Because if you can answer those questions, all of a sudden, great things start to happen. But it requires us to be lovingly honest with ourselves. It requires us to say, you know what, ma'am, you have not done what you needed to do. Sir, you have not been clear on your goals. And then this next question here is a big one. Do you typically root for the underdog or the champion? Now, don't say that out loud. Don't put that in the chat. And here's why. Most people typically root or cheer for the underdog. But do you know why? Science proves, and studies from dozens of colleges and societies, they show that most people root and cheer for the underdog to defeat the champion because they could never vision themselves as the champion. And this is where we go back 57 days out. I need you. You need you. Your future self, your family, friends, loved ones, your clients, customers, the prospects, your bank account needs you to see yourself as a champion. Why? Because we can never be more than we see. So if you see yourself as the underdog, always fighting against the man, the system, the market, the industry, we're never going to see ourselves as the champion. So my challenge to you, the next time you're watching a sporting event, and I say this, as long as your team is not the underdog, okay? If you're watching a sporting event and it is the champion versus the underdog, root for the champion. Why? Because your body, your subconscious, your mind needs to know, I'm on the side of the champion. Yes, I want dominance. I want to have what we call a dynasty. But if we are always rooting for the underdog, what happens when we become the champion? Subconsciously, we aren't aware of it, but we start rooting against ourselves. So I'm going to challenge you to start rooting for the champion as long as you don't have a dog in the fight. And then we look here. Have you experienced a significant victory in the past 3 months? Some of you are going to say, heck yes. Some of you are going to say, heck no. And then some of us are going to say, I don't know. And if you're saying, I don't know, or if the answer is no, could I challenge you to just maybe take 30 minutes today, not tomorrow. Take 30 minutes today to reflect, because if we look hard enough, we will find victories in the past 3 months, in the past quarter. Well, what was significant? What did I overcome that I thought was impossible? What goal did I have floating loosely in my mind that actually came to fruition? So I'm going to ask, what significant victory, or have you experienced a significant victory in the past 3 months? And then this one here is what we call our reward system. How often do you celebrate personal or professional wins? Now, some of you are like, Neal, never. I haven't made $1 million yet. Well, here's what I'm going to tell you, a loving truth that I'm going to talk about you and myself at the same time, is that what gets rewarded gets repeated, right? What gets rewarded gets repeated. And you may be that person, well, Neal, just the satisfaction, that's a lie. Your subconscious is still that 5-year-old who's looking for a gold star, right? Who will do the right behavior as long as there's some type of reward on the other end of the behavior. And I'm not saying anything about us as human beings in a negative light, but it works for dogs, it works for all animals, it works for kids, and if we do the same thing, it's going to work for us. Now, here's what I'm going to share. The reward system does not have to be huge, it does not have to be extravagant, but it must be defined. If you want to guarantee a win in any area of your life, and we're going to look at the 5 areas here in one moment, create a reward system. It doesn't have to be huge, but it does need to be defined. When I hit my prospecting numbers for the week, here's my reward. When I set my number of appointments, here's my reward. When I have consultations, pendings, closings, here's my reward. And it could be a tiered reward structure. But if you will create a reward system, because what am I willing to bet right now? You might not have a reward system, but you have a punishment system. And here's what that punishment system is. Oh, you knew you couldn't do it. Oh, you failed again. Because we say the same thing about our New Year's resolutions, but we're doing it on a micro scale daily. Man, I should have made one more call. There goes another week without a buyer agreement or marketing agreement on the listing side. So we want to build in our reward structure. Doesn't have to be huge, doesn't have to be extravagant, but it must be defined. So now we're going to look at the most important part of the Win Before You Begin playbook after we change our mindset. And if you look at the top of the screen, there is one question that I need you to answer. What does success look like for you? Right? Not what does success look like for Instagram or for Memo or Bobby. What does success look like for you? And we're going to do this in 5 areas. If you're in a coaching program or if you've been around for any number of years, you've probably heard of this thing called 5-circle fit. And this is where we talk about family, personal, spiritual, business, and financial. Family, personal, business, spiritual, and financial. Now, here is a challenge for us. We are high achievers. We are strivers. We're entrepreneurs. So typically, how do we define success? Financial. And if we don't hit our financial goals, what does that little voice, that big voice, that nagging voice? And I'm not talking about your spouse or significant other. I'm talking about that voice that stays in your head 25/8 for 366. If we don't hit our financial goals, what is that voice echoing? You're a loser. You failed. You didn't do it. But what if we clearly define what success, what a win was in the 5 key areas? Family. Now, some of you might say, well, Neal, I don't care about the family, the personal, spiritual, business. I only care about the financial. I'm going to put out a cautionary tale. How many financially successful individuals have we seen that had the wrong focus, and then at the end of their time here, they decided to make a premature exit? So we want to start asking these questions because we're going to walk through this method right now. What would success look like in your family life? What would you like to accomplish this year or next year? I'm looking at next year, meaning 2026, so that I can plan and do the steps today. And we're going to look at that for the family, the personal, the spiritual, whatever spiritual means to you, business, and then financial. And the reason business and financial are separate is because you might have business goals that have nothing to do with finances. Your financial goals might have nothing to do with business. Your financial goal could be tied to spiritual and giving. Your financial goal could be tied to family and trips. So I really want us to get clear. Remember, I said most people fail, one, because they don't have a clear vision, right, about what a win looks like, and then they don't map out the plan. We're going to have one plan that could potentially touch all 5 different areas. And this is how we guarantee that we win before we begin. Most of you today have already won your Wednesday. Why? Because you planned yesterday or Monday or last week to be here today. You know exactly what you're going to do out after our coaching call here today. So if you can do that on a micro scale daily, why shouldn't we apply the same thing, the same process to our lives? And it's much easier than we think or than we've been taught. So we're going to use the Warren Buffett method. The Warren Buffett method is we're going to take all of those goals, what success would look like in those 5 areas, in family, personal, spiritual, business, and financial. And we might have 25, we might have 30, we might have 15, but we are going to choose our top 7. And when we choose our top 7, we're talking about the top 7. Now, I am going to caution you here. It is my hope after studying success and then after working with successful individuals, it is my hope and my goal for you, my challenge to you, not to make all 7 from the same circle. We don't want all 7 of your top goals to be from family or financial. For us, we are typically going to lean more towards the business and financial. Let's sprinkle in some of that personal, because I don't believe that you are the captain of your ship. I personally believe that you are the ship. There is no abandoned ship. If the ship goes down, everything around us goes down with it. So as we look at those 5 circles, and now we have identified 3, 4, 5 victories or goals that we want to accomplish in each of those, we might have 25 things. Now we're going to take the time. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, this is the foundation, the unsexy part. This is where we have the green construction security mesh up, and we can't really see what's happening. IG, Facebook, your family, your friends, Memo, Bobby, they're not going to see the results of this in 2 days. We are going to know that we've done a thing to lay the foundation. And so here's where there is a question where we talk about counting the cost. So one of my favorite quotes says, "For which of you intending to build a tower does not first sit down and count the cost to see whether or not you have enough to finish it?" So we have now these ideas. We have these ideas or I'm going to say semi-clear vision or views of what success looks like in these different areas. But now we have to make some adult decisions. We have to come in and say, well, what are my top 7? And then we're going to just write them down. And we are going to do the challenging thing of categorizing them. Is it faith? Is it family, personal, spiritual, business, or financial? And then over here, we're going to put a deadline date for that goal. And you're going to say, well, Neal, how do I know what the deadline is? I do not have the process. That's okay. One of my coaches and mentors gave me this thing called Genesis deadlines. And I don't know if you all are familiar with Genesis deadlines, and this is not a spiritual or scriptural talk, but the idea is that if God could create the world in 6 days and rest on the 7th, what could you do if you gave yourself unrealistic deadlines? I just believe that you are a creative being. I believe that when it's time for vacation tomorrow, we get a lot done today. when we know that we're going to be out, or when we're in a crunch and losing is not an option. And typically, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be when we are being held accountable to someone else. It's amazing what we get done. So I believe whatever that first deadline that comes to your mind, shorten it by 2 or 3 days or a week or 2 weeks, and let that be your Genesis deadline. And after we choose our top 7 goals, that's part of the Warren Buffett method. But here's where it really starts to gain energy. Next year would be awesome if, it would be phenomenal if I accomplished the following 3 goals. Those are what we call our banner goals, ladies and gentlemen. These are the 3 big goals that are going to help us. If we could move toward and accomplish only 3 things in 2026, what would they be? If we accomplish one of those, it would be a good year. If we accomplish 2 of them, woo, it would be awesome. But if we accomplished all 3, we will be living on cloud 9 and our feet would not touch the ground. So to quickly recap, we have gone in, we've gotten clarity on the 5 circle goals. We've taken those 5 circle goals, maybe 15 to 20, we've narrowed those down to 7 top goals with deadlines. And then we said, well, our top 3 are going to be these. Maybe one is going to be financial. Probably is going to be financial. Maybe the second one is going to be personal. And then the third one is going to be business. Because now we are starting to see what we want to accomplish. And when there is vision, when there is clarity and passion, then there starts to become this idea of formulating the plan. And this is where now we move into the next phase, the next stage of the process. And ladies and gentlemen, I do want to pause here. I know I'm talking about this as if it is easy. It is not easy, but it is worthwhile. And so now we're going to look at the same thing 3 different times. All we're doing is we're going to break down. We know exactly what a clear goal is. We're creating the plan, and then we're going to look at measurement. So right now, going into the Warren Buffett method, we're going to look at banner goal number 1. Maybe it's going to be close X number of transactions or do a certain amount of sales volume. The first thing that we must answer is not what do I need to do? That is not the answer. It's who do you need to become to handle this victory, to handle this win. There's a saying that the worst thing that can happen to a person is for them to receive an opportunity or a blessing that they are ill prepared for. So it's my hope, it's the team's hope that you don't walk into success that you can't handle. Why? Because then that 25/8 366 voice that's always with us, even when we sleep, is going to say, I knew you couldn't handle that. You knew you weren't ready. Who are you to work with affluent clientele? Why are you trying to be a listing agent instead of a buying agent? Why are you working with so many buyers? You know you don't, right? Whatever that is. So we want to make sure that we ask first, who do I need to become in order to achieve this goal? And here's what that looks like. It might mean that you need to be someone who shows up on time instead of being late. It might mean you have to become a person who is comfortable presenting virtually. You might have to be better one-on-one, face-to-face. You might need to become a more confident, outgoing person. Maybe you need to stop talking so much, right? I don't know. But we have to answer the question, who do you need to become in order to achieve your banner goal? After we know who we need to become, let's start looking at some habits, right? We're going to look at habits in 3 areas. First, in order to become this person that can do or achieve this thing, what new habits, disciplines, or behaviors do you need to start? Maybe you need to get up and actually prospect. That would be a huge one. Maybe you need to start following up. Maybe you need to watch the replays, or like whatever it is, that habit, discipline, or behavior, what do you need to start? And this is not going to come from me. It's not going to come from leadership. The first place is going to come from is that inner feeling, that inner nudge, that voice, the thing that you know if you did, it would dramatically impact positively your business. Because if you're here today, you are not the part of the mediocre many. Your goal is to join the ranks of the elite few. And so that's our hope. Answer the question, what new habits, disciplines, or behaviors do I need to start? The next one, the next question we're going to ask is, what current healthy habits, disciplines, or behaviors do I need to expand? Do I need to do more of? Right? So Jim Rohn would say, if you want to double your income, double the things that result in income, that produce income. So in essence, what he would say, if you want to double your sales, double the amount of time you're face to face with your clients, customers, or prospects. If you want to double your appointments, double your prospecting hours, calls, outreach. If you want to double your closings, what do? Double the number of pendings that we have. So maybe you're already doing some good habits, disciplines, and behaviors. We just need to expand upon them. And this is where I call it doubling down. So as we're reflecting, we know what we need to start. We're doing some good things. I will say, if it is November 5th and you have not already assessed where your business has come from or where it has not come from this year, could I just encourage you to do an honest assessment of your business today? Don't wait. And I know I'm asking you to do a lot of things today. Well, that's because I really do want us to start building momentum, and you'll see why in a moment. But what has worked? Because if something has worked, what if we just did more of that? Maybe you don't need to join a new platform, a social media platform. Maybe you don't need to start dancing or doing something that everyone else is telling that you must do. You just need to do more of what already works. And then finally, this hard question, but necessary. So this is what we call scary but necessary. What poor habits, behaviors, or disciplines do you need to stop? And I'm saying you, but I'm really talking to myself. What things aren't serving me in achieving those banner goals that we talk about? When we talk about the 1, 2, or 3 in those 5 areas, what do I need to stop? Maybe I need to stop scrolling on social media so much. Maybe I need to get to bed earlier, stop staying out late. Maybe if the greatest financial impact would just be frivolous spending. And so I want to ask you, what is it that you're doing that you need to stop doing? And many times we'll know what we need to stop doing by looking at the things that we need to start doing. Oftentimes there will be counterparts, there will be opposites there on the scale. So I want you asking, what do I need to start? What do I need to do more of? And what do I need to stop? So this is where we have now counted the cost. And then we're asking, am I willing to do these things here in order to achieve those banner goals? If the answer is no, ladies and gentlemen, we can't point the finger at anyone else. What we have to do is we have to ask ourselves, do I really want this thing? Is this really one of my top 3 goals? Because if we aren't committed, this next stage of how to guarantee a win before we begin is going to be seemingly impossible. So now that we know what our banner goals are, this is where it gets fun, interesting, and challenge. Remember, I mentioned, what's the third reason why most people lose? It's because they either don't measure progress or they measure at the wrong intervals. So now we're looking here, once we have goal number 1. Remember, we put that Genesis deadline up here for the date to achieve this thing. Be realistic-ish, right? Don't say, I want to make $1 million. I want to do 30 transactions and have the money in my account in 20 days, right? So let's be educated, let's be smart. But when we come here, now this is where we break this idea, this goal, this vision down into these actionable steps. This, ladies and gentlemen, is how I guarantee I win. This is how you guarantee a victory for yourself in any of the 5 areas, because this is, once we have that clear vision, this is putting the tire to the pavement. This is creating a plan and executing the plan. And the beauty is, this plan, what we're about to look at now, does not matter who you are. It doesn't matter your age, color, your national origin, doesn't matter your proficiency in the English language, none of that, your years in the industry. If you work the plan, if you work the process, you win. When we put our destination in Waze and it knows where we are, we're not saying, oh, I hope I get there. Oh, we're going to reach the destination. Now, there might be some detours, but as long as we follow, and maybe we need to adjust the plan, but as long as we stick to the plan and follow the roadmap, we're going to achieve victory. We're going to guarantee a win. And so that's what I want you thinking about. So the intermediate destinations, let's just say we're talking about sales volume or transactions. I want to have X amount here as my banner goal, X number of transactions. Well, what are going to be some intermediate destinations? I like to see, you see we have 3 spaces here. What if we just broke that down into quarters, maybe by Q1? And this is where you need to know what your business and what your seasons, what your rhythm or cadence looks like. For me, I'm not doing a lot of business in the first quarter. Most of my business comes in Q2 and Q3. So therefore, I would want to build momentum and say, well, what's my intermediate destination? If I have X for my goal by a certain date, maybe at the end of March, I need to have X number of transactions closed. Then the same thing at the end of June, and the number might swell. And then we look here at the end of September. What do I need to have accomplished? So that's if this big goal is an annual goal. Now, what I don't want you to do, hopefully, is say, well, in 1 week, I need to have this. In 2 weeks, I need to have a different number of transactions. And then in 9 months, because we are creatures of habit, and you're a great salesperson, you will sell yourself on, I've got enough time. And then we look up and it's November 5th and we're 57 days away from the end of the year. And we look out and we cannot see our destination. So now, after we have some intermediate destinations, this is the part that's going to pull you through and to your victory. We're going to ask, who is impacted? If you achieve whatever your goal is, if you stay on track, who's going to be impacted, both positive and negative? Who's that person whose life would be dramatically changed, either good or bad, if you accomplished your goal? And you're going to say, well, Neal, if I accomplish my goal, how could that be a detriment to someone? Well, there are some people who are just riding your coattail. There are some people right now who are leaning on you that if you win, if you start building momentum, you're going to shake them off. And they're going to say, but wait, come back, stay here. I like to call them our broke friends, right? Your broke friends will be impacted detrimentally. But that's okay. We've got more rich friends waiting on us. So we want to ask, who is going to be impacted, and is it going to be positive or negative, and what's the benefit or the detriment for them? Now, once we know the steps that we're going to take, the mile markers as we get to our destination, who's going to be impacted by this journey that we're on, who's going to help us get there? Who's our mentor, coaches, experts, or our ways? And then who and when are we going to reach out to? Maybe some of you need a coach. Some of you might need a financial advisor. In our business, we might need to just reach out and get a CPA or a financial advisor. I don't know. And so this is where we start breaking down, in order to reach this goal, who do we need to bring alongside and what assistance do we need to get? I'm going to use the one that many people use for their New Year's resolutions, getting in better physical shape. If that's the case, maybe we need to get a personal trainer. Maybe we're going to have to download an app. I don't know what it is. But then we keep moving a little further. Remember what we're doing right now. We're not in the spotlight. We're not about to top off the building. We're still here in the dirt. We're still here where no one can see, and they might even be pointing fingers at you right now. They're like, man, she is doing nothing. I don't see her at these events. I don't know. She's laying her foundation. She's pouring her foundation. What research is needed? Do you even know what a top producer looks like? Do you know what it means to be a person who is fit? Do you know what a good parent is? Maybe you do, maybe you don't, right? What research is needed? Is it going to require you to go in and look on YouTube, to go to the library, to buy some books, or are you going to have to go to a seminar? Do you need to go into the back office and watch some of the hundreds, maybe thousands by now, of training videos that are in the catalog? And then how do you get it? If you need more self-assurance, more self-esteem, how do you acquire that? Are you going to listen to a specific trainer or motivational speaker? Are you going to start using affirmations? What resources are needed? Are you going to reach out to Frachelle and say, listen, I have this goal, but my marketing is not as good as it should be? And then she says, well, that's why I'm here. I'm here to help you achieve your goal. I'm here to make your marketing process easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? And so where do we get the resources that we need? And then finally, this is where we're going to really answer that question, who do I need to become? Right? Because that's the thing. Who do I need to become in order to achieve the goal, the greatness, the win, the success that I'm going after? And this is what training or self-development is needed. This requires us to have that loving conversation with ourselves. Maybe you also reach out to that trusted, loving accountability, what I call success partner, and you ask them, what holes do you see in who I am? What holes do you see in my personality, in my business practice? And be prepared for the loving critique that you're going to receive. They say, hey, you're a great person, but your language is foul. You're like, oh, okay. So you turn potential buyers, sellers, customers, clients, family members, colleagues off. Maybe they're going to say, you're just not very confident. You need to walk into the room with your shoulders back and your head high. They could say, you're just ignorant. You don't know the marketplace. When I ask you what's happening in the market, you have no idea. And then we start answering the questions and addressing what training or self-development is needed. And then how do we get it? Is it going to be on YouTube? Do we do a self-paced course? Are we going in and actually getting some formal education? Do we sit down and have lunch with someone who is already doing what we are doing? Now, I do want to say, if you're going to have lunch with someone who's doing what you're already doing, they're probably not going to be in your marketplace, right? So if you're in South Florida, go over to the West Coast and ask some of your colleagues, what's working over here? What are you doing? I want to mimic, I want to emulate, I want to glean some of your input from over on the East Coast. We have partners up in New York. We should be asking them, what's working for you? Hey, can I do this? Maybe it's not lunch, but maybe it's going to be a virtual consultation. And then here's where we start looking at the big picture, right? Or stop looking at the big picture and look at the micro items. And this is where we're going to start to close. Remember, I keep asking you to do something today. Well, we know from science, from studies, and from real world application that if you don't do something in the next 24 hours, it's highly unlikely that you're going to do anything at all. So this is that playbook that's going to help you answer what actions are you going to take in those 3 towards those 3 banner goals for the year in the next 24 hours? If you don't have an answer for that, the chances are great that you're not going to do anything moving towards that goal. And then we're going to be having this conversation 365 days from today, and you're going to say, I did not do anything. So this is how we can guarantee we win before we begin. We have the power with 57 days left in the year to do something in the next 24 hours, to do something in the next 10 days, in the next 30 days, and then in the next 90 days that are going to move us toward success. It's going to all but guarantee. And so here's how this works, ladies and gentlemen. That is the entire win before you begin playbook. We know who we are. We must see ourselves as winners, as champions. But I want you to look. This has been broken down into quarters, really. So each quarter, with 57 days left right now, ask yourself, what can I do before the end of this year? In the next 24 hours, what can I do to move myself towards a big win for 2026? Then, what can I do in the next 10 days? What can I do in the next 30 days? And then in the next 90? And what happens at the end of 90 days? We go back and we assess. We ask ourselves, have we become that person? Have we started doing the good behaviors, disciplines, and habits? Have we expanded on those that are really dollar producing activities? And when I say dollar, it doesn't necessarily mean currency dollar, but just result producing activity. Have we ceased doing those behaviors, those actions, and those habits that are detrimental to our success? If the answer is yes in those areas, what are we doing? We're going to choose at the end of 90 days. Now, what am I going to do in the next 24 hours? What am I going to do in the next 10 days? What am I going to do in the next 30 and the next 90 to move myself towards success and a win? Because if we will do that, here's what I know. I know that your 24 hours from now, we start building momentum. We have broken inertia that has been holding us in place. Then in the next 10 days, we say, I've done something in 10 that I thought it was going to take 30. Guess what? Kudos to us. What are we doing? We are reassessing and going back and saying, maybe I thought too small. Neal told me to look at where I'm going without restriction, without limitation, to put that Genesis deadline. And this is how the best of us guarantee that we win. Because if you would do something in 24 hours and in 10 days, you're probably going to figure out if it's a great idea, an okay idea, or a dumb idea that you should abandon altogether. By the time you get to 30 days, you're either going to have momentum or you're going to have learned what not to do. And then 90 days, we're going to go back and reassess. Are we on track? When we look at our Waze app, are we moving in the right direction, or have we stopped? Have we turned Waze off altogether, or are we moving backwards? If we are moving in the right direction, at the end of 90 days, did we win? Yes or no? Did we accomplish what we sought to accomplish? Yes or no? What do we need to improve or adjust? What do we need to stop? What do we need to start? This is the playbook. This is the manual that guarantees success, a win before we begin. So I hope that seeing this, breaking this down, that those big goals, those big dreams that you have for 2026, that they're not as daunting, that it's not as scary. Because here's the beauty. You can guarantee a successful 2026 before, watch this, before the end of November. There are things that you can do in the next 20 days that your 2026 goal, you're probably going to have to reimagine. You're going to have to reassess. You're going to look up and say, well, I thought I was going to have that by December 31st, 2026. And it's like, no, I had that by June 1st of 2026. Why? Because we've defined what a clear win or victory is. We have created and followed a plan that leads to success, and then we are measuring progress at the correct interval. And I know from personal experience, as well as from the experience of peers, colleagues, and my personal coaches, that if we will follow the plan, that a win will be guaranteed before we begin. So I want to thank you for hanging out with me. I also want to challenge you to do something with what you have heard today. Do something with that playbook. Go back and watch the recording.